Okay, today I'm going to talk about just a skill that I think sometimes people either forget or have trouble with. It's adding and subtracting fractions. Um, you know, it's, I'm just going to assume that maybe you've seen this before at some part in your or point in your life, and you just need a little refresher. So we'll start off here with just a common mistake when I see people do this. When they look at adding and subtracting fractions, the first thing they want to do is they just want to take the top and add it and take the bottom and add it. So if we take the top, we do 1 plus 1, we get 2. And the bottom, we get 2 plus 3 is 5. This is not correct. Okay, this will make your math teachers frown and be very upset that you're not getting this correct here. So we'll talk about the way that you're going to do this. This should actually work here. So let's go ahead and erase this. So it's not going to be 2 over 5. When we're dealing with fractions, they sort of work like terms, where you have to get them on a similar playing field before you can actually add them together. So if we have 1/2 and 1/3, the first thing we want to do is look for a common denominator before we add these. So you cannot add these because they do not have like denominators. So what we can do is on any fraction, we can multiply the top and the bottom by the same number to try and change it so that they'll have the same denominator. So we'll start here by looking at 2 and 3. And if we calculate the least common denominator here, that's going to be the number that 2 and 3 both evenly go into. Okay, so preferably the smallest number, but the smallest number that 2 and 3 both evenly go into. And in this case, it's going to be 6. All right, another way to do this would be if you were to list out the multiples of 2 and list out the multiples of 3, you would see that they both share a common multiple of 6. That's going to be the common denominator here. Okay, sometimes you have to go up a little bit further than that, but for this case, 6 is going to be the one that works. So anyway, we'll erase that. So 6 is our common denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2, and I'm going to think about what do I have to multiply 2 by to get it to become a 6. And in this case, 2 times 3 is going to give me a 6. What I have to do is multiply by 3 over 3. The reason that I'm doing that is I'm really multiplying by 1, because any fraction that's the same on the top and the bottom is really just like multiplying by 1. So 3 times 1 gives me 3, and 3 times 2 gives me 6. So 1/2 is really just the same as 3 over 6. Now, same thing with the 1/3. I'm going to multiply by something here that will make this bottom a 6. And in this case, I'm going to need a 2. 2 times 3 is 6, which means I also have to do that on the top. Otherwise, I've changed the number. So 2 over 2 is the same as 1. I'm not changing this. I'm multiplying by 1. So the bottom will give me a 6, and the top will give me a 2. And now I'll change this to a plus. Now these work like terms. If I have 3/6, and I add 2 6 to that. So if you have 3 6 and I give you 2 more sixths, how many sixths do you have? Well, 3 plus 2, if you add the tops, gives you 5 sixths. Okay, and that would be our answer for the first one. Okay, and another thing, again, you don't add the bottoms here. Think about it like terms. If you have 3 6 and you add 2 more 6, that is a total of 5 sixths. We'll look at the next one here. So if you look here at the bottom, I'm going to go a little faster from here on out. We've got 5 and 3. The least common denominator here, or the smallest number that 5 and 3 both go into, you can list them out like I did before, but that's just going to be 15. So in this case, I'm going to have to take the bottom number times 3 on this first one. So I'll multiply by 3 over 3 here. That'll give me 3 times 5 is 15 on the bottom. That should be my common denominator. And on the top, that'll be 3. So 1/5 is really just the same as 3 over 15 minus. Now, to get this 3 on the bottom to be a 15 for that common denominator, I also need to multiply it by the top. So 3 times 5 on the bottom should give me a 15. And on the top, 2 times 5 should give me a 10. And now, if you look here, if I have 3 fifteenths and I subtract 10 fifteenths, that should give me -7 fifteenths. And there's our answer to the next one. Okay, moving right along, we've got 7 minus 3 over 2. In this case, 7 is it might not look like a fraction, but we can actually write it like a fraction as long as we write this over 1. So anytime you don't see the fraction bar, we obviously have that over 1 for that. So to get our common denominator here, since we have a 2 on the bottom already, we just have to multiply the top and the bottom by 2. The only denominator here really is 2 and the 1, so 2 over 2 should get this to have a denominator of 2. So on the bottom here, I'll get a 2, and then 2 times 7 on the top will be 14. So we'll have 14 over 2 minus 3 over 2. And now from here, 14 minus 3 is going to be 11 halves. So if you have 14 halves and you take away 3 halves, you've got 11 halves left. For the people who prefer mixed numbers or that kind of thing, this could also be written as 5.5. Okay, or 5.5 for people who prefer decimals. All right, we got one more to go. If I have 2/5 plus 1/3 minus 3/4, again, now I'm going to have to find a common denominator for all 3 of these denominators. So what I'll do is I'll start here. I'll do this one the long way just to show you guys, for some people who have trouble doing this in their head. We're going to look for the common denominator for all these by listing out the multiples and seeing what multiple they have in common. So I'm just going to list out a few here for 5. We'll do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35. That's a few for 5. We'll go with 3 now. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and then we got 21, and I'll stop here at 24. We'll see if we can find one from this. And then for 4, we'll go with 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. We got 24, 28, and we'll stop up here at 32. Now let's see if we can find one that they all here have in common. And to me, it doesn't look like I'm finding one here just yet. So we could keep going. Sometimes when you can't find one, though, it's not a bad idea to just multiply all 3 of these together. And while it may not give you the least common denominator, it'll always give you a denominator that they have in common. So 5 times 3 times 4 here, if we check this out. So we got 5 times 3 times 4. And if we kept listing, we would find out what this is equal to. But in this case, if we don't want to list this all out, we could just get a denominator here of 60. Okay, so the common denominator here, a common denominator, and in this case, this actually is the least common denominator, is 60. This will always get you a denominator that's common. It may not be the smallest, so you might have an extra step where you have to reduce at the end, but this will always at least get you in the right direction. So let's go ahead and find all the ways we can get a 60 on the bottom. So now for this first fraction, if I want to get this 5 to be a 60, 5 goes into 60 12 times. So I'm going to need to multiply by 12 over 12 on the first fraction. We'll go ahead and do that. That will give me 24 over 60 plus. Now we've got the 1/3 here. Again, 3 goes into 60 20 times, so I'm going to need to multiply this by 20 over 20. Okay, 20 times 1 on the top is 20, and then 3 times 20 on the bottom gives me the 60. So we're getting these common denominators here. And then finally here, 4 is going to 60, that'll go into 60 15 times. So we'll put a 15 over 15 here. And now if I multiply across the top, I'll get 45 over 60. And now we just have to add and subtract from left to right like we would with order of operations. So 24 plus 20 across the top here, that's going to give me 44 over 60. And then I'm going to bring down this minus 45 here over 60. So I just did this first part. That gave me 44 over 60 here. And now I just have to subtract. If I have 44 60ths and I subtract 45 60ths, well, I'm going to be in debt 1/60th. So I have negative 1 over 60 there for our final answer. And that's the key with adding and subtracting fractions.